Hey guys, we're gonna start on our last chapter for the year. And then after we're done with this, I got a couple things to do, but other than that, this is it. It's the final stretch, final PowerPoint. So, let's just get into it. So this is urban development, and this actually is gonna kind of um go with what's just kind of going on in 2020 and all that. So, let's get into it. So if they want to load up. Okay, so for y'all, for the bell work, describe the downtown of a city. Y'all will probably do Dallas, that's okay. And then what do you expect to find there? What do you think you're going to see? Because that's what we're going to kind of go over today. So, um, but I do want you to take a mindfulness moment. Just be kind of like, just sit for like 30 seconds to like a minute and just think about something positive. Think about like be grateful. I just want to share this with you just because I know you've been busy with school, but just take a mindfulness moment. Like just be mindful of what's going on and just like take care of yourself because I know everyone's kind of stressed. I'm stressed, so just take a moment for yourself, okay? So the objective is you'll be able to explain how the decline of a central business district or CBD affect the rest of the city. So here's your totally useless bit of information. Oshiya or pushers are employed in some of Tokyo's railway stations, and they're literally like their job is just to push people into crowded trains during rush hour. It's like how would you rate your service? Pushy. Oh, okay, then we did our job well. But yeah, I just think this is kind of a funny thing. It's like, oh, get in there, get in there. So, urban development is a thing. So, how, as a group of people and human, how does city life work? How do we survive the city? And how do we develop a properly functioning city? And so, for a discussion, to write down on your assignment, what makes a good city? What makes a city? What makes a good city? Is it the people? Is it the stuff? I don't know. You answer that. So, the big city. So, there is something called urbanization. And so, this is when people are leaving the suburbs and going to live in the city. And so, people are moving from the suburbs and the rural area and going to the city. So, this increases in a less developed country over time, and then an increase in a country's percentage of people living in cities will increase into a more developed. So the more people you have living in cities, the better off you are as a country or as a development city. So that's kind of something to look at. So differences between urban and rural settlements. So obviously in urban, which again means city, and rural is like country. So obviously in urban areas, the concentration and density of people are higher. And you see more people, it's highly dense, and you have kind of these services that you need for yourself. For instance, in the city, you have taxis, you have public transit compared to like out in the middle of nowhere where there's not that much public transit just because there's not a need for it and it's too expensive. But in rural, you have less social relationships, more isolated, and then the cultural differences and diversity is greater. So in cities, you have more diversity in and less homogeneity or gene genity, um, which is just like there you have more diversity. You can go on a street in New York and hear like 10 different languages being spoken at once. Or if you live out in the country, people tend to live, excuse me, tend to live further apart, and their culture is more monotheistic, or more of a monolith, and more homogeneous, which is just like more of the same. So we have, I'm gonna move me, yeah, that's good. So you have categories. So you have a town that has a central business district, but is less complex and it's smaller. So you might have like a town square. In a city, it's more of a complicated business district, and it's based in large populations. And then there's a suburb, which is kind of like outside of the city. It's residential, homogeneous communities, so more people living the same. And then a metropolitan area is kind of all of this put together, where the urban area is included in the suburbs and small towns. So if you look at the DFW area or the Metroplex, that's a metropolitan area. And then there's stuff called megacities. So megacities have more than 10 million people, and they have some problems. They're overpopulated in apartments. There's slums being like kind of built up out of nowhere, kind of like this over here. And then you're unable to control the expansion of the city, and that leaves your infrastructure kind of wanting. So like some of these mega cities look kind of like um, slums. I know there's I think it's Fast and Furious 7, that they're in a mega city, and they're driving around and you see this kind of shanty town. And then there's a megalopolis, which is several metropolitan areas that have merged. So that's more DFW. So DFW is Dallas and Fort Worth, both metropolitan areas. So that's a megalopolis. Or you could say, I'm trying to think what else. San Francisco and Oakland, the Bay, that's a megalopolis. And then I'm thinking what else. That's pretty much it. Like when I bet you there's more, and y'all would send like comments to me saying it's like, oh, there's so more, and I'll be like, oh, duh. But then there's world cities. So this is international urban centers, and kind of you see commerce and finances being dealt. Dallas is kind of a small a world city, and but like New York, LA, London, Paris, Tokyo, all of those places are kind of these huge global cities. They're world cities. They have very big international hubs. So, um, come up with your own. So, for your geographic connection, come up with your own examples of each type of city. So, like, for instance, come up with a town, come up with a city, suburban, metropolitan area, mega city, megalopolis, and a world city. So come up with your own types. So I do want you to look this up, and I will post this. But Little Shop of Horrors, Skid Row, it kind of shows you kind of what it's like to live in the city. And so I want you to look at the lyrics, think about what you saw in the video, and then what is the musical saying about the life in downtown? I want you to answer that question. And so I kind of put this in the wrong spot, but this is CBD, a central business district, not CBD oil or whatever. But this is a compact area with a high percentage of services. So you're not going to see a whole lot of like high rise apartments, residential. You're going to see services. Um, so this is probably the oldest part of the city, and it's also a big hub for transportation. And so, and I actually, what sort of services would we find in a central business? Not why. Sorry. Um, But what's not in the CBD, you'll see industry. So you won't see manufacturing, you won't see factories or stuff like that. Um, and you're not going to see a whole lot of residentials. But people live in suburbs. But millennials like me, most of them are moving back to the cities because we don't want the expenses of a car, like all of this stuff. We would rather be living in a city where people are taking care of most stuff. But there is this competition for land. Everyone wants to be in the CBD, so the land there is super expensive. So if you think about downtown Dallas or downtown New York City or London or anything like that, you have like land prices that are just astronomical because if you have a business that goes there, you're going to make money. And so the underground, that's something that Dallas doesn't have. We have DART, which is Dallas Authority Rail Transportation, I think. But it's underground, the transportation, public services, and even consumer services. And then you have skyscrapers, retail at the bottom, offices in the middle, and then apartments at the top. And so you have those going on. And so, for a summary, describe the central business district. I want you to do that. Identify some problems that could come up with a CBD, and explain how the decline of a CBD affects the rest of the city. So, if the downtown area of, like, say, Dallas or Fort Worth would go down, how does that affect the city? How do you think that would hurt Dallas, Fort Worth, New York, whatever? And so, based on your knowledge of environmental science, what role do cities play in your environment, and what are the challenges or benefits? So, how does living close to Dallas, living kind of in a suburb, a real close suburb of Dallas, affect you? So, make a list of services and industries and infi- infrastructure. So, requirements for a city, and then my perfect city. So, these are things that you can have. And so, we're going to look at a bunch of different maps of cities, and this is where I would go to Google Maps and all this, but I posted a whole bunch of this. So, this is New York City, and you can see the underground and the trolley system, and you can kind of see where everything is. And so there's different neighborhoods or different boroughs. So you have the World Trade Center site, and this is kind of the CBD. This is kind of the very important oldest part of the city. Washington D.C. and also you can see kind of how it's different based on the geography. So New York City is on a peninsula. It's on an island, kind of. So, and then if you look at Washington D.C., it looks very different. And so you can kind of see the oldest part of the city right here, and it has all of like the historical stuff, all the government buildings, and then it sprawls out. London, same thing. And again, you can see that there's a common theme with most. It's near a body of water. And so you see this is um, London, and so you have the Westminster Bridge, you have the Waterloo Bridge, you have all these bridges kind of going on, and then so you have the Waterloo International, um, I think airport, yeah, and then you have these parks, Buckingham Palace right here, and this is kind of the old part of London. Tucson, Arizona is kind of built really weird. So their CBD is over here, and there's a major highway that goes through it. Istanbul has a interesting thing. So these are the rivers that lead in, and so they kind of have a split up CBD. So this is Europe, and then it splits into Asia. So there's an Asian CBD, there's the Europe, and then this is kind of the Istanbul. This is where they can close off to the world if people from Russia and kind of the interior want to get out of the Black Sea and all that, this is where it stops. Tokyo, you can see that Tokyo, the CBD is right here because it gets closer and closer connected. And then also you can see there's a bay, there's a river, there's all of that good stuff. Cairo, this is the Nile. And so the city center's right here. And so it's very close to the access to water because you need, again, water to survive. And back in the day, that's where it all was kind of being kept. And then you have, oh gosh, what is this again? I forgot what this is. Oh well, but this is Seoul. Again, their CBD is right here. It's really all of this, but this is the like real downtown. You see City Hall. You see kind of all of the major like things that are around. And so think about all the city maps we looked at. And what are some commonalities. You can look at it and kind of look where it is. And then this is where I would have put our urban planning project on, but obviously we can't really do that. So your objective is to able to describe the geography of your imaginary city. I was going to make you make your own city. Also, your totally useless bit of information again for day 2. The most money ever paid for a cow in an auction is $1.3 million for a cow. And her name was Missy. Yep. I wish I had money to throw down on a cow like that. Um, but what are some challenges cities face as they grow? Want you to answer that. What are some things? Um, I want you to add 5 things you would want in your perfect city. So, like in that little T chart that you have, you can just list it or whatever. Add 5 things. What do you want in your perfect city? Do you want a river? Do you want mountains, amusement park, something like that? And then how can an urban planner make sure the city is environmentally responsible? So we're growing and stuff, but if you look at Beijing and you look at China and the heavy, densely populated places, you can see a whole lot of pollution. How can city planning or urban planning planners really make sure environmental responsibilities taking place? So again, we're looking at all these. I accidentally put them twice, and I was just too lazy. And so 3. So we're gonna move out into the suburbs. What do the suburbs look like to you? We're gonna describe 3 stereotypes, and we're gonna look at, I think, probably one of the funniest groups of pictures I've ever put together because they're from 1950s, like come to the suburbs, and it's kind of that Leave It to Beaver type sense where it's like, oh, the white picket fence, the dog, all of that, the barbecuing, oh, husband's gonna go out and play golf, all that. And so you will be able to summarize the type of urban expansions and its effect. Also, again, another totally useless bit of information. Pinball was banned until 1978 because it was a gambling device, and it was like they would have prohibition style busts where the cops would come in, bust up the pinball rings, and just like take the pinball machines away because it was they viewed it as a gambling device. So, but let's talk about some suburbs, guys. So this is where you get kind of these interesting houses. So answer these questions. What are the pictures showing? What do they have in common? And what message are the following pictures trying to project and how? So what are they trying to insist? So here's some suburbs. So you got this one, riding lawnmower, living in the suburbs, home, garden, sunshine, all of this, and the trains going out. You have reward yourself with Paul Mall cigarettes, and then also if you look, oh, I'm sorry, I accidentally put this on a PowerPoint. There's supposed to be music playing, but if you look, Allendale, New Jersey, $26,000 for 2,000 square feet, and then it's like, oh, this is the house. And then Levittown, 1957, so up to date, so smart. Um, Everything in America is today modern. Moderns are giving a new light to all their surroundings and their trim, youthful look, all this stuff. Look at that. Philip Morse, like cigarette company. This is like, look at what's going around out here. Um, Branch and suburb homes. Look at these. Another picture of the suburbs. More suburbs. Bold new plans for best land use. More livable homes. So this is kind of an article, so you can make sure you look at that. It's a promise. General Electric is like, hey, start planning for a house, all that. Um, Barbecuing, charcoal starter, like, oh my gosh, it's liquid fire essentially. No down payments for this house. This is for us, this house, kind of looking at what it looks like. All the barbecue. Dad's coming home or coming inside from working outside in the yard. Golf, Lucky Strike cigarette, like just look at all this. And then it's like beer commercials. It's like, oh, have this beer, American beverages in moderation, all this stuff. Look at what they're kind of looking at as the suburb lifestyle. Lots of room, come along, and this is just like the crystal ball. $8,000 in Lake Ronkonkoma, New York. $8,000 for 1,000 square feet. Davis Estates, builders of homes, all that. Building or barbecuing still. Again, you get to see all these pictures, and it's kind of funny. It's like, oh, the Wonder Years. Like, have a good yard, drink some Orange Crush, all of this, and it's just like, enjoy the fresh new taste, have a crush. And then it's like, look at me, we're having a barbecue. And then it's like another Lennox heating system installed. Just have the finer things in life. And so, what are the pictures showing? What do they have in common? What messages are the following pictures trying to project, and how? How are they trying to project what they're saying? Again, I will post this video as well on the assignment somewhere that's green. Again, it's from the musical. And so discuss, how does Audrey want to live in the suburbs? How are the suburbs portrayed? Do you want to live in the suburbs? And then you have urban expansion. So we're going, like, there's the suburbs, but then eventually the urban touches the suburbs. That's kind of like Mesquite Garland. It kind of is more city-ish. So conurbaration is when cities grow until they meet. So like a megalopolis, like DFW, Dallas Fort Worth kind of meet together, and in between is the DFW airport. And then there's gradation of density. So over time, if you look at the city, you can see where people have lived. So in 1900, I think, I'm trying to think, this might be Chicago or Milwaukee. I think it's Chicago. But it's like here is where most people lived. And then it starts to kind of go out. And over time, 1960 comes around, still dense and it's evenly dispersed. And then in 1990, you can kind of see where people are living. And it's like, it used to be historically more people lived in the center, and now that's changed over time. And then there's the suburbs, which is an edge city. So an edge city, independent settlement near big cities. So this might be your Wiley or annexation. So legal process of adding land area to a city. So Houston is very notorious of this. So my grandma lived in Sugarland way back when, and then eventually Sugarland became kind of like a part of Houston proper. And you're just like, Sugarland used to be its own city, and then Houston's like, nope, we're taking you. And that's kind of happened. And my sister lives down there, and she says she lives in Houston, even though it's in Tomball. Just one of the things. And then there's the sprawl. So progressive spread of development overland. So over time, the city gets bigger and wider, and it's just sprawling. It's just all over the place. And so I will um, go over that discussion. What could be some possible problems arising from annexation and suburban sprawl? And then number three, because of sprawling and stuff, you can have the loss of open space and farmland. You have green belts. So in the UK, there's rings of open space around the city before the suburbs that are meant for growing farmland. And then smart growth. This is like, okay, we are going to preserve land for parks, all of this, and we're going to slowly let it grow out. Problems with suburbs. Wealthy families move out of old homes and into new ones. Poor families move into the old homes, and it's just kind of like you can see the rich part of the rich part of a suburb town, and then the poor part, like the older part. And so socioeconomic status, people who are in lower incomes and education and occupation live in more poor areas than the rich areas. Rich people live in the rich areas. Obviously, they live in better, newer homes. And then the economics of it, consumer services move because of customers. You go where the business is. You go where people are wanting to spend money. So business services move because it's cheaper. So a lot of these services are abandoning the CBD. So that central business district is losing because you're trying to make money as best as possible. And if you're having high rent because in the CBD land is expensive because you're in the middle of it all, you might have a problem with people going out and like, okay, I'm not going to go into downtown. It's a struggle because if I asked all of you, when's the last time you went to downtown Dallas before all of this started, it would be like not that much because it's just busy. It's hard to find parking. It's too expensive. All of this stuff, and so some businesses are like, "Hey, we don't want to be that close in. We want to be farther out." And so there's a video on poverty in the suburbs, and so explain the ways the urban centers are expanding, and then describe the positive and negatives of this expansion. And so I'm going to stop here today. Next week, I will finish off this PowerPoint. So hopefully this is good for you. Again, I'll post those two videos on the assignment. So have a good day, guys. Miss y'all. Hope everything's well. Okay.